Federal prosecutors have opened a criminal investigation into Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. In a video announcing the probe, Powell said that the U.S. Justice Department served the agency with subpoenas and threatened a criminal indictment over testimony that he gave to a Senate committee about renovations to the Federal Reserve buildings. Now, he called the probe unprecedented and said that he believed it was opened due to him drawing Donald Trump's ire over refusing to lower interest rates despite repeated public pressure from the president. The Fed chair is the latest to come to odds with the president and face criminal investigations by the U.S. Justice Department. Now, in a video announcing the probe, Powell said that the U.S. Justice Department served the agency with subpoenas and it threatened a criminal indictment over that testimony that he gave to the Senate committee.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned, in part, a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people.
Right, let's bring in our SABC News Specialist Correspondent, Sophie Mokoena, now for more on this. And Sophie, good morning. So this, of course, the latest, where we now see the Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, being summoned here. And basically, it's not as much of a surprise because we know that Powell and Donald Trump have been at odds, with Powell stating that in terms of the decisions of the Fed, they always try to go by empirical data, and that obviously is not what Trump wants to hear.
Yes, you know, it started last year when President Trump visited the site where renovations are currently underway at the Fed offices. And therefore, you could see last year the body language that there was a standoff. And therefore, it was expected that President Trump will continue to put pressure on Jerome Powell. As you know, that he has been trying to influence decisions taken by the Fed, particularly as it relates with interest rates. And as the Fed chair has pointed out, he has tried all along to push back. And unfortunately, here we are where now the Justice Department is investigating criminal charges against Jerome Powell. But you had him saying that the civil servants or public servants must always stand firm in the midst, or even if they can be under pressure, and take independent decisions without fear or favor or political seeking political correctness, but rather focus at the task of before them, and therefore he will continue to do that as the policy of the Fed is clear. And therefore we are likely going to see this having an impact on the dollar, and of course other global currencies that are linked with the dollar, but also the markets.
And of course, we also see, Sophie, that it's not just Jerome Powell. Also there we see the federal prosecutors launching a new probe into the New York State Attorney General Letitia James as well. So quite a bit going on there. But Donald Trump also posting on Truth Social that he is the acting president of Venezuela.
Yes, that's what he did on his social media platform, Truth Social. He posted that he is now the acting president of Venezuela. Now, the question is, we were told that the vice president of Venezuela is the acting president. And therefore, you can see that he is sending a message that United States of America is in control of Venezuela. How far true is that? We don't know, because you have a situation where the current government, under the leadership of the vice president of Venezuela, constantly rebutting information, saying that they are in charge, they are in control. And this will escalate tensions and divide the leadership of the governing political party in Venezuela, with some people already saying behind the scenes the vice president is working with the United States of America. Other people dismissing those allegations, and her saying she is still in charge and pushing that the autonomy and the sovereignty of Venezuela will not be compromised. But when you look at what's been happening and what President Trump is saying, you ask a question, who is telling the truth?
And then moving on to Iran, and we've been seeing these protests, Sophie, over I think it's into its third week now, where there have been protests in Iran's 31 provinces, and Trump now saying that Iran wants to talk.
Yes, you know that President Trump did post last week saying he's watching the protests in Iran. And later he indicated that it looks like he will have to do something because Iranians want liberation. And therefore, the reality is we know that Israel and United States of America did launch attacks in the nuclear sites in Iran last year. And therefore, you can't rule out the two countries taking this opportunity where there's these powerful protests to ensure that they are able to send a message to Iran. The Iranian government and authority and leadership is pushing back and indicating that they will defend Iran, but we don't know. And Trump now saying that Iran has indicated that they want to talk. We don't know. We are waiting to hear what will be the reaction from Iran or Tehran based on what President Trump is saying. But we also saw yesterday Iranians who are in support of government taken to the streets, and there were lots and lots of people in those protests. And therefore, you can see that the country is divided in the middle.
And then just finally, Sophie, Trump saying that they will actually take Greenland. And of course, this has sparked quite a bit of controversy, especially among their NATO allies, because Denmark, the prime minister there, has come out saying that Greenland showdown could be a decisive moment. So what do we make of this?
Well, as we pointed out, that President Trump is implementing the Monroe Doctrine vigorously. The other leaders of the United States of America, as it relates to the foreign policy, they always use Monroe Doctrine, where the United States of America will do anything when its interest, economic interest, and security are threatened. And therefore, Greenland, President Trump is basing it on security, saying China and Russia are going to take over Greenland if they don't do it. It's not about the security. It is also about interest because Greenland has got the rare earth minerals, and therefore you know that the war of rare earth minerals has escalated where countries want these rare earth minerals for their own economic development. And therefore, the issue of President Trump is both security, but mainly economically, including Venezuela, and also this Monroe Doctrine that he has revived, even though it was launched in 1823. And therefore, we expect the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to travel to Europe in Denmark, meeting people there and the leadership there as America is powering ahead to ensure that they do take over Greenland. As it relates to what they themselves have been saying, and the president few minutes ago when he was flying back to Washington early hours of this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Sophie Mokoena, our specialist correspondent here at the SABC, all matters related to Donald Trump and what's happening in the United States.